electronic communication as a means, well, electricity as a means, communication changed very much when electricity was introduced and it became a new form of communication, or communication was changed. And something there's a foundational phrase, I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, that says, I came up with the electrification of communication was a revelation. The most profound changes in communication have happened in the past 200 years. And especially in the last 50 years, and they're getting much quicker all the time. To help you visualize the following, imagine the face of a clock. So I've got here the face of a clock, and Angela will love this because she does clocks. So imagine a 1 hour period, and if you can, each minute is representing 50 years. So we've got 3,000 years in the 60 minutes, okay? So, if you can try to forget the fact that it's 25 to 9, it's actually 9 o'clock in my world, okay? So we're all being transported forward 25 minutes. So it's now 9 o'clock, okay? So, now think back to 1 minute past 8. That is around about 900 BC. And at this point, they haven't yet discovered paper, but they can write.
Really sorry to interrupt, but somebody got a 58 plate 4x4 in the car park. Big, black 4x4, it's blocked. No, and it's the only part of the group, you're not grouping it in the other room?
No.
Mm-hmm. No. Thank you.
So yeah, they haven't yet discovered paper, but they can write and they have created an alphabet. So, that was at 1 minute past 8. We now go fast forward and we're at 4 minutes to 9 o'clock. And so we're now around about 1838 to 1844, and we had the discovery of Morse code. So that's 3.4 minutes before where we are now. We come to 2.7 minutes from where we are now, 1875, and the telephone was invented. We come to 1.6 minutes, so we're very close to where we are now. And the TV was invented in 1929. 38 seconds ago, the invention of the mobile phone, which was in 1979. And then 22 seconds ago, SMS messaging, or texting, as we all know it, was invented. Now, as well as huge leaps in general communication, there's been even more so in computing. In 1950, the transistor was invented. And in 1970, the silicon chip was developed. And because of these innovations, it not only reduced the size of computers, but vastly increased the speed and the power of them as well. Now, if you've got a device like this, if you've got an iPhone, it probably has more computing power in this than was on the entire planet in 1940. Or many of today's children's toys, a few people here have children, many of our children's toys have more computing power than 1960s mainframes. Or if you have a Samsung phone, never have we been able to start fire so quickly. Now, the average digital wristwatch, I don't wear one myself, but there's probably a few people who have got watches. I see you've got one on. Now, the average watch now has far more power and memory than the 1969 Apollo moonlander, the space vehicle from which Neil Armstrong said the famous words, "One small step for man, one giant step for mankind." And the pace of expansion in computer technology over the past 70 years has been breathtaking.
I am really sorry, it's a Honda CR-V.
No.
Yeah, it's a car in the car park, a Honda CR-V 58 plate. No.
It's entirely possible that somebody's come in from outside and left it there.
Sorry, pardon?
It's entirely possible that somebody who's not here has come in and used our car park.
Yeah, but it's another one. CRV.
So the pace of computer technology has been incredible over the last sort of 50, 70 years, whatever. In 1937, we had the first electronic digital computer. Easy for me to say. Created at Iowa State University. In 1965 was the first phone link set up between two computers. In '76, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs produced the Apple I computer. In 1980, not many people know this, the Taliban implanted the first artificial intelligence into a human being, and they called this unit the Trump. In 1984, we had 1,000 internet hosts. 5 years later, in '89, we were up to 100,000 internet hosts. 3 years later, 1992, we're now at 1 million internet hosts. 1997, 5 years, we're now at 20 million internet hosts. So the expansion, the growth was just phenomenal. Also, in 1997, something else happened. For the first time ever, a domain that was registered, www.google.com, was registered in 1997. And just 10 years later, in 2007, Google overtook Microsoft as the most valuable and most visited online brand in just 10 years' time. By 2010, we'd hit 2 billion internet users around the world, and now, as of 2016, we're at 3.5 billion. There's 7 billion people on the planet, half of them are using the internet. Now, if the technology of motor cars had developed at the same rate as that of computing, the average family car would be very different to how it is now. We wouldn't have problems in the car park rather than now, for a start. But it would travel at 6 times the speed of sound, be capable of about 1,000 miles per gallon, and would cost less than £1. Would you buy one? I think I'd get 2. You'd have to be a little bit careful with the accelerator. Now, I'm going to concentrate on 3 aspects of electronic communication. How texting has affected us, how it affects relationships, and internet dating. I think that's wrong. You see, I've got 15 minutes. No, it's, if you look at the time, I've got 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
so
you've got 40 seconds still.
No,
Because
if you look at this 15 minutes, you just put the handle.
Oh, sorry, go on. Yeah, you're right.
So, has texting led to people's social skills and grasp of grammar being impaired? Many people would say yes. The use of technology to communicate has drastically increased over the past couple of decades. And in 2002, only 10% of the world's population had something like this, a mobile phone. 3 years later, 2005, 46% of the world's population had a mobile phone. So in the space of 3 years, from 2002 to 2005, we went from 10% to 46%. Non-verbal communication, so including voice inflection, facial expressions, body language. Now, as we know here more than anyone at Toastmasters, is a crucial part of communication. And this will affect how people communicate with you. When you're texting, you can't use these things. It's very difficult to use inflection. You can't use facial expressions and body language when you're sending a text. So if you generally rely on your quirky personality traits, or your humorous sarcasm, and offbeat humour in social situations, on a text, on an email, on a Facebook post, they're all gone. And I mean, have you ever jokingly responded to someone on Facebook, on an email, on a text, only for it not to be taken as a joke? I know it certainly happened to me. Now, without the proper voice inflection, it's way too easy to interpret something as rude, which you never meant for it to be rude in the first place. And what about if you find something funny? How will someone be able to tell that your ha 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 was actually meant as something funny, or was it just simply a filler word? Now, you need real life giggles to coincide with the ha ha. But unfortunately, texting doesn't really allow for that. So you have to write ha ha ha, which I don't know about you, I find that quite annoying. I hate using lol. I loathe using lol, but unfortunately sometimes needs must, and you don't have any other choice. Now, ladies, have you ever wondered why your boyfriend isn't super chatty by text? Or husbands, maybe. And why it feels like you can have hours-long communication with your girlfriends about absolutely nothing. And guys, have you ever wondered why sometimes it feels like your female friends can talk forever by text or even by phone? Men and women value communication very differently. Each gender sees communication as having very different significances, and sometimes those significances don't align. Various communication scholars, including a guy called Ronald D. Smith, who's based at Buffalo State University in the States, says that men communicate to convey information and women communicate to create intimacy. For men, communication is a way of simply exchanging information. Once the needed information is exchanged, men feel there's nothing more to say, that's it, end of conversation. Women, on the other hand, view communication as a tool to relate, to share, to connect, so the scope of conversation for women is unlimited. Women text to bond, but men bond by doing activities together, sharing new skills, playing sports, playing video games, going to the gym, going to the movies, whatever. If a man doesn't text a woman as frequently or enthusiastically as she texts him, she thinks he has no interest in her. She interprets his lack of texting as him not wanting to bond. But then he probably wonders why she's so randomly upset with him. He didn't do anything wrong. Texting is just not a man's preferred method of intimacy. He needs communication in conjunction with an activity. So he'd probably far rather you just simply come around and watch a movie. It's a lot easier. However, texting can be a method for a guy to ask a girl out in the first place. Or you could just use a dating site. Has anyone here ever used a dating site? Not many. Okay, I was expecting more hands than that. Or maybe we just got a few people who are a bit shy. Now, as a DJ I performed at over 2,000 weddings, I've probably heard more wedding speeches than anyone in the country. And one thing that I've really noticed, especially in the last 15 years or so, is that about 15 years ago, in those speeches, you would never hear anyone admit to having met via a dating site. Now, in the last couple of years, every speech they've met on a dating site, be it Tinder or Match or whatever it is, and it's now unusual if someone hasn't met via a dating site. And today on the news, I saw there's now been a new dating site has just come on board for Trump supporters. I'll let that one sink in and move on. Hopefully we'll see fewer sites like this. Fewer sites. Now, some dating sites and apps can be amusing in many ways, and I don't know if any of you, or not so many of you, it seems, are familiar with dating sites, but there's one site called OkCupid, and one of the things they do is they ask you a number of questions to what they say is to match you up with potential partners, if people have sort of answered in the same way that you have. Some of the questions on there. Here's a taster of some of the questions on this dating site. In a certain light, wouldn't nuclear war be exciting? Now this begs the question that some people have answered yes to this. Another one. Which is worse? Starving children or abused animals? Now maybe the person that devises these questions is conducting some kind of weird psychiatric experiment. I don't know, I'm not sure what he's on. And I'll just give you one more question that's on there. Would the world be a better place if people with low IQs were not allowed to reproduce?
Is this from the Trump vote?
Well, I mean, the fact that Donald Trump might never have existed if that was a law is neither here nor there. Now, another thing to ponder about these sites, but they all go on about how many thousands of potential partners they have for you and how attractive they all are and what amazing personalities they have and so on. And they say you're guaranteed to find the one in no time at all. But on the payment terms, the price for 1 month is pretty steep. The price for 3 months works out a little bit cheaper on a per month basis. And the price per year works out much cheaper. And then they say underneath the year that 1 year is the most popular term. But before they told you that you're guaranteed to find the one in no time, so why on earth would you sign up for 1 year? Now, as for the profiles, it seems to me that there's a few typical types of profiles on the dating sites from what I've seen. I've looked at a few of them. And there are some girls that will have 4, or obviously I'll be looking at the girls, not so much the guys. There are some girls that will have 4 or 5 copies of exactly the same photograph. No other photos at all. And it seems to me that these girls love playing spot the difference contests, and they're looking for a guy who's a bit of an expert in spot the difference contests. And then there are the girls that, but the scariest profiles I've seen are, and I've seen numerous ones like this, where all of the photos of themselves are wearing a wedding dress.
Oh.
Now that would be a psychiatrist's dream to get a patient like that, wouldn't it? And what's the thought process behind that? But by far the most are seeking the elusive Mr. Right, the knight in shining armour. And you may think I jest. No, many do actually use those words. I am looking for Mr. Right. But would they really want a knight in shining armour? I mean, just think how much work that is, keeping that armour shiny all the time. And what about when he wants to bring his mates around for a drink and he insists that you've got a big round table there? Okay, you might have to think about that. And when you buy a second-hand car, you expect the previous owner to be upfront with any defects. But on a dating site, there's far less honesty. No one admits to boiling bunnies or rolling home at 3 o'clock in the morning 3 times a week. But what if dating site was like buying a car? If a dating site was like buying a car, if you could have a test drive and ask questions about bodywork and performance, and if you could maybe part exchange your older model. The electrification of communication has certainly not only been a revelation, it's been a revolution.
Here we go again.
Thank you.
So this is the final time of the service. I just want to put something in that cupboard up there. 2 minutes, yeah? Sorry, please.